Hello everyone, welcome to Learn Economia. In this particular video also we will be covering the theory of unlimited supply of labor by Arthur Lewis. So as you have remembered in the past two videos, also in the previous two videos also we have dealt with the same topic, but in this particular video we will be focusing upon one single aspect of a theory of unlimited supply of labor. We will be covering that aspect which deals with the financial or financing part, or what is the source of finance that make development through unlimited supply of labor. This is the main crux of this particular video. Before going to the video, I would like to request all my non-subscriber viewers, please note that you have been subscribed to my channel, so please feel subscribed to my channel. This is my small request to you. I think you have forgot to subscribe my channel. I could see that you are watching my videos. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for watching my videos, and your subscription to my channel will definitely add as an encouragement to me. That would help me to put new and new videos which discuss about different economic theories, so that you will be able to learn a lot about the theories in the arena of economics. So with that, with the small request to all my non-subscriber viewers, I would like to start this particular video. So let's get started. Here we have seen that the theory of unlimited supply of labor is set in the background of a dualistic economy or an underdeveloped economy, where we have two different sectors, the capitalist sector or the modern sector, and the subsistence sector or the agriculture sector. Here we could see that in the agriculture sector we have marginal productivity of labor as zero, whereas in the case of the industrial sector or the capitalist sector we could see the marginal productivity of labor increasing. And also we could see a difference between both these sectors with respect to wage rate prevailing in both these sectors. When we have subsistence wage prevailing in the agriculture sector, we have more than subsistence wage prevailing in the industrial sector. Like that, we could see that there exists numerous differences between the agriculture sector or the subsistence sector and the modern sector or the capitalist sector. So here it is worth to be mentioning that in this particular model of Lewis, which discussed about the unlimited supply of labor, the rate of accumulation of industrial capital and therefore the absorption of surplus labor from the agriculture sector, this is something that depends upon the distribution of income in the economy. How income is distributed in the economy is very much important to understand. It is a very important factor that determines how the rate of accumulation of capital and how reinvestment is made so as to lead to the next level of production, and how this would lead to capital accumulation, how it lead to capital formation in the economy, and ultimately economic development. So this is very important. So distribution of income plays a very important role in the unlimited supply theory of labor of Arthur Lewis. Here, with the aid of classical assumption that all wages are consumed and all profits are saved. So this is a classical assumption, and Lewis theory is set in the background of this particular classical assumption. Here Lewis shows that the share of profits and therefore the rate of saving and investment will rise continuously in the modern sector or the industrial sector, and the capital will continue to be expanded until all the surplus labor has been absorbed. This is something that we have seen in the previous videos which deal in detail with the theory of unlimited supply of labor. So before going forward, I would like to request you to go and watch those two videos which describe about the unlimited supply of labor in detail. The previous two videos actually discuss or give you a detailed explanation of the same theory. So it would be better for you to go and watch those videos and come back and see this particular video, so that you will be able to get a better understanding of this particular topic or concept of unlimited supply of labor. So for those people who haven't watched those two videos, please go and watch. So this will definitely help you to understand this particular topic in a better manner. So coming back, we could see that the rising share of profit, it is something, this is something that serves as an incentive to reinvest these profit in the next level of production. So we could see in the previous two videos that it is the profits that is received from the first level of production, that is helping the capitalists to go for next level of production by reinvesting these profits so as to help in expansion of the industry. So this is the profit is something that is considered to be a source of saving to finance next level of investment or next level of production. Now, how can we consider profit as a means of the capital formation in Lewis' theory of economic development? This is a question that is worth to be answered. Lewis' model of unlimited supply of labor actually considers the profits as the main source of capital formation in the economy, especially the dualistic economy, which we are talking about in this particular model. The greater the share of profits in the national income, the greater would be the rate of savings, and this would further lead to greater amount or greater level of capital accumulation in the economy, and thus expansion of the modern or capital sector would happen, and the rate of saving and investment as a percentage of national income would rise continuously. As a result of this, rate of capital accumulation would also increase relative to national income. So this is what Lewis had. And we know that if you assume that all the profits or a greater part of profits is saved and automatically reinvested, this is our assumption. Even though there is a rise in the profit, major part of the, even though little bit of profit is used for consumption, that is negligible only. That is the only negligible portion of profit is used for consumption. So we are not taking that into consideration here. We are on the assumption that a majority of the profit received from first level of production or second level of production or each level of production, it is something that is saved for investing into the next level of production. So it is also evident that the share of capitalist profit depends upon the share of capital sector in the national product. So that is implied here. Now, as a capitalist or the modern sector expands, what happens is that the profit in the national income would also rise, implied, right? Now, this rise in the share of profit in the national product is due to the assumption of the model, assumption of the Lewis model, that wage is something that remains constant and prices of the product produced by the capitalist sector do not fall with the expansion in the output. This is the assumption in the classical in the Lewis model, and it is out of this assumption that we are this is one of the assumptions out of which we are building from which we are building our model. And to quote Lewis himself, we could see that he says that if unlimited supply of labor are available at constant real wage, and if any part of the profit is reinvested in the productive capacity, profit will grow continuously relative to national income. This is what he's told. So if we reinvest profit for the next round of production, what happens is that profit would grow continuously, and this will affect the national income in the economy. So we have seen how profit is influencing capital formation and ultimately economic development. But it is very much important to understand that profit is not the only source of finance that can be used for development of the dualistic economy, which is facing unlimited supply of labor. There are several other sources as well with respect to finance. Now, credit is another source of finance which Lewis has identified here, and he says that apart from profit, credit creation or credit is also important in helping in the expansion of the economy through unlimited supply of labor, and ultimately economic development is the result. So he holds that, Lewis holds that in an economy which is marked by the scarcity of capital and abundance of resources, which these are the characters of dualistic economy, that we know that these are the characters of an underdeveloped economy. So in an economy in this particular scenario, credit creation would have the same effect of capital accumulation as the more respectable means of profit. This is identified to be a most respectable means of profit. So apart from capital, apart from profit, we have to understand and give importance to the role of credit here with respect to the Lewis model of economic development with unlimited supply of labor. whether it is capital or whether it is credit. In both the cases, the ultimate result would be increase in output in the economy, and as a result, increase in the employment of the economy, and ultimately economic expansion and economic development. This is the end result. However, capital formation resulting from net increase in the money supply would necessarily be accompanied by an inflationary rise in prices. This is something that we have to understand. If there is credit creation in the economy, or if there is more credit given to the people for entrepreneurs for reinvestment, what happens is that they would be having more amount of money with them, and they have to spend this money in the economy, right? So there should be goods and services in the economy that which should be able to cater to the needs of the these people who have money, because they have money and they should get some goods and services out of this money. If the demand and supply doesn't match, if the demand and supply do not match, what happens is that there will be some kind of imbalances in the economy, and if demand is more and supply is less, what happens is inflation in the economy. And this is what is this is the same thing which happens here also. There will be inflationary rise in the prices, but this is only a temporary phase, or this happens only in the short run, and as this is a short run phenomenon. Now, when surplus labor gets employed in the capital sector, what happens? When surplus labor is employed in the capital sector, for capital formation, then out of this capital formation, which is created, the immediate effect would be the rise in price, because they also have wages in their hand. At first we could see that as a result of credit creation, or as a result of giving credit to the, as a result of this bank credit and all, new entrepreneurs would be coming up and investing in industries, or existing new entrepreneurs would be trying to expand their existing industries, and they would be employing more people. There would be more surplus labor withdrawn from the agriculture sector, and they would be getting re-employment in the industrial sector. As a result, they would be getting wages for their work. As a compensation or as a remuneration for their work, they would be getting wages. So now both the teams, both the entrepreneurs and the wage laborers, both of them have money in their hands. So this would create inflationary tendency in the economy. So here the logic is that here, while purchasing power in the hands of workers would immediately increase as a result of gainful employment in the industrial sector, because compared to the subsistence wage in the agriculture sector, now these people are earning more, right? The output of the consumer goods remains constant for some period of time, because today they get employment, tomorrow they won't be able to produce more and more for the market. It is something that is a matter of time. However, the movement of the newly formed capital created by the credit money the output of consumption good will rise, because they have money in their hand. These wage laborers have money in their hand, so in the initial phase they would increase their consumption. But what happens is that at this point of time they haven't produced enough goods and services for them. So this will create a mismatch between demand and supply, where excess demand would be there. As a result, there would be inflationary pressure. Therefore, but ultimately we know that in the ultimately there would be increase in the production, but there is a span of time, or there is a span of time in between increased wage rate and increased consumption and more production, right? There's a time lag is there. So after this time lag, what happens is that the output of consumer goods catch up with the increased purchasing power. Now for this match, there is a match between the demand and supply, and thus the prices start taking a downturn, because there is more production in the economy. There are people have money, more production. Now there is a match between demand and supply, so this price will come down. That is, the price of goods will come down. Besides, this inflationary process would also be made to die away through another mechanism that operates simultaneously. What is that? With the monetary expansion, not only the output and employment would rise, but also profit would rise in the economy. With the increasing profit relative to national income, savings would also rise. Therefore, the volume of investment would be financed out of the created money this would go on diminishing with the increase in the voluntary savings, right? In the ultimate result is that the seeds of inflation would be completely killed when the voluntary savings catch up with the inflated level of investment. Now, this will go on and ultimately would result in the restoration of equilibrium. And once equilibrium is restored, what happens is that the new investment made thereafter would be financed without having to fall back upon the bank credit, because the entrepreneurs would be having enough or sufficient amount of funds with them. So as a result, now at this particular point, after the restoration of new equilibrium, there is no need to fall upon or depend upon bank credit. With the savings growing in equilibrium with the investment, the rise in price is bound eventually to peter out. So with that, today's video is ending. Thank you for watching this particular video. I request you to like, share and subscribe my channel. Again, I would like to request all my subscribers to like and share my channel. And to all my non-subscriber viewers, please do subscribe to my channel. I'll be coming with another video next time. Probably I'll be dealing with another aspect of the same theory in my upcoming video, in one more video. After that, we'll be covering some other theories. So with that, for the time being, bye.